Hello, my name is Maya. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have decided to do the extremely hard task of figuring out whether or not Dean is in love with Cass. It's actually going to be split into multiple videos, so this is a debate style video. The first one you're watching right now is going to be the for argument. Then the second one is going to be the against argument. And then the third one will just be concluding thoughts. So basically, like, based on the arguments of for and based on the arguments of an against, what do I think the ultimate conclusion is? So the way that the first two videos will work in this series is I'm going to present reasons why in the canon of the show you can argue that Dean is in love with Cass. The way this first video is going to work is I'm going to present reasons why in the canon of the show you can argue that Dean is in love with Cass. Throughout this section, I will also present counter arguments to the points I make. It's going to be kind of a fun debate style video. And then in the next video, I will present the evidence against the fact that Dean is in love with Cass. And then in the same format, I will present counter arguments throughout. Now, a few things before I begin. I want to make something very clear. If it was not already clear by the fact that I own these, again, I did not purchase them, but I do actively have them out. So I really ship Dean and Cass. I think I've made that clear up until this point. I don't think I've hid that. However, I like really critically analyzing things, and I think the best way to really explore this topic in particular is to look not only at the evidence that is in favor of this point of view, which is my point of view, that Dean is in love with Cass, but also the ones that contradict this point of view. Because I think that in a show that queerbaited until the very end, there is very much a lot of evidence for, but there's also a lot of evidence against. And I think it's fun to kind of compare those two and then kind of see like what the end result is. Like, did they present more evidence for, or did they present more evidence against? Or like, what kind of things and takeaways can you get from the behavior that Dean exhibited towards Cass throughout the show? So I believe that Dean is in love with Cass. However, that does not mean that the conclusion of this video will be the same as my belief, if that makes sense. But that being said, this is my interpretation of the fiction and my opinion of what that means for the ship overall. So that doesn't mean that I'm right, because fiction is interpretable and nobody's opinion is actually right. It's just the way that you view it. But I do have a very strong bias that will be very hard to contain. So I'm going to try to be unbiased and try to come to like the most unbiased. But of course, I'm still going to be biased throughout this. So we're going to try to be as unbiased, if that makes any sense. Let's get started then, shall we? So I will be presenting the for argument playing as AO3/Tumblr. And I think we all know the reasons why, because AO3/Tumblr is where Dean and Cass lives, thrives. This is where Destiel gets its main creative buzz, if you will. This is the hub of Destiel. So I'm going to be playing as the for will be played by AO3/Tumblr, and I'm going to tape this on my shirt and we'll see how this goes. So will I edit this out? Who knows? We'll see what mood I am in when I'm editing. Sometimes I keep this shit in and sometimes I just get rid of it. So definitely just depends on my mood. Like, how much do I hate myself in this moment? You know, when you're editing, you kind of like, you see yourself like go on these weird brain tangents like to yourself, and you're kind of like, this is weird. And then you're looking at your face a lot and you see like weird things you do. Anyways, I will be playing AO3/Tumblr when I'm the for. So the counter arguments will be presented by the supernatural writers, because I think we all know in our deep darkest souls that the biggest haters of the Dean and Cass ship are the people who wrote it. And I'm once again gonna tape this on myself. As you can see, my co-host Luna is here. Let's see how long she behaves herself. Who knows? Luna, how long do you think you're gonna behave yourself, baby? Maybe like 5 minutes? 10 minutes? We'll see how long we last before she starts attacking something. Baby! She just wants attention. Oh, she's already on the move. And what is she gonna attack? Please don't attack my phone. Luna. Oh, okay. So see, she's going for the phone stand. So like that's a no from me. Introduction for the 4 argument, which again is being presented by AO3/Tumblr. I will be arguing for Dean being in love with Cass. In order to prove this point, I will present 14. Yes, that's right. I have 14 pieces of evidence when put together that show Dean is in love with Cass. It is undeniable and canon that Dean and Cass have a profound bond. That is noticeable by others. This is canon, okay? Cass has literally said, we have a profound bond. Those are the exact words. I did not even make that up. Supernatural said that. Many angels and even some demons have remarked on the closeness of Dean and Cass's relationship. Many have said that Cass is in love with Dean. No one has said anything about Dean's feelings, really, but I digress. It still means that there's something to comment on here. So, let's go on a journey together through some indications that Dean is in love with Cass. Piece of evidence number 1, the touching. I feel like one of the easiest pieces of evidence to point to that Dean has feelings towards Cass is how much Dean will touch him and how he'll touch him. If you've never seen this phenomenon, as though it's like some weird out of space, out of body weird thing that could never possibly happen. People touching each other. It's not like they're holding hands or like hugging all the time, though their hugs are beautiful. It's the little small, like almost subconscious touching. Like Dean will touch his shoulder for like no reason. When Cass is hurt, Dean will like cradle his face in his hands. If Cass is in the faintest bit of distress, Dean's hand is on his arm. I think one of the most important things to point out about Dean's touching of Cass is that most of the intense touching comes when Cass is in danger or dying. The cradle in the face is, for instance, a Cass is in trouble exclusive touch. He does not just cradle his face like randomly, which I wish he would, but like he doesn't. And it's the same with their hugs. They don't hug unless there is danger prompting it or like one of them came back from the dead. You know, Dean does initiate a lot of their hugs. In fact, he initiated their first hug ever, which was in Purgatory, and their last hug was also in Purgatory, and he initiated it as well. We love the parallels. Did Supernatural mean to have the parallels? Who knows? However, they're there, and I love that. Since I am arguing that this is evidence of Dean being in love with Cass, I will present my interpretation of Dean's touching behavior towards Cass. Dean keeps a lot of his touching of Cass quite tame when they aren't in danger, like a shoulder pat or a forearm touch, a touch that on its own isn't very indicative of anything. You touch your friends and your family on the shoulder and their arm. Does that to Sam. I mean, his hand lingers longer on Cass, but you get my point. However, when Cass is in danger, it's like the boundary that he's placed between him and Cass falls, and he touches Cass the way he wants to, like cradling his face and touching his thigh, keeping that hand on the shoulder for like way too long, pulling him into an intense hug. Dean is afraid of losing the people he loves, so when they are in danger of leaving him, he touches them. He physically needs to hold them so they can't leave him. The way that Dean's hands will linger on Cass until he is sure that Cass is going to be okay and not leave him is a way of reassuring himself that Cass is still there with him. It's the same with his hugs. It's like he needs to hold him to believe that he's real and here. When Dean's fear is strongest, his feelings are the most evident. He loves Cass and needs to touch him when he's in danger to ensure he's still with him. So, my counter-argument to your first piece of evidence is, now maybe you're just reading too much fan fiction. Me and Luna have been reading too much fan fiction. This is a lovely sentiment, and it could be true. However, it is important to point out that Dean has cradled Sam's face at least once before when Sam was in danger. No, Sam and Dean are not in love. Shush, Winslow shivers. This isn't a video for you. And it's not a video for you either, Luna. Just sit next to you on my lap, babe. Oh, I know what I'll do. 1 second. Though I will admit there is something different in the way that Dean touches Cass. If there is counter evidence of Dean doing the same towards Sam, then I must point it out. Dean and Sam also only hug when they're in danger, or one of them is like dead for the 8th time. I mean, in the last scene, we see Sam and Dean alive together, they forehead touch as Dean dies on rebar. So it doesn't make your earlier point invalid, it's just something to point out. The touching alone can't explain Dean's feelings towards Cass. Piece of evidence number 2, the emotional vulnerability. One of my favorite things about Dean and Cass's relationship is how they're able to have these really emotional and important talks with each other. There have been so many times where both Dean and Cass will initiate hard conversations or push the other one further if they feel like they're holding something back. Now, Dean sucks at expressing his emotions, and yes, I will admit my boy does like his emotional speeches to the struggling monster of the week or struggling victim of the week. But, and you know, Dean also enjoys a dramatic car ride emotional talks with Sam. But, you know, where I think his talks with Cass differ from those other examples is that Dean actually opens up, and most of the time with like little to no prompting. It will sometimes take Sam episodes to get something out of Dean. Cass, on the other hand, seems to bring many emotions out of Dean. I mean, if you think about it, like way back in season 4, there was that episode where Dean was forced to torture for the first time since hell, and it was Alistair, the demon that tortured him and then got him to torture in hell eventually, that he was torturing. And he was facing his trauma a lot that episode, and he like knew Cass for not that long, but had very raw and emotionally vulnerable moments with Cass that episode. Like when he was talking about how the torture would change him if he did it, or when he was crying about starting the apocalypse to Cass. Dean has shown for the most part that he is very comfortable expressing his feelings towards Cass and having hard emotional talks with Cass. As evidenced throughout the show, Dean doesn't trust a lot of people and tends to express most of his emotions as anger. So I really think it's indicative of how safe he feels with Cass that he can have those intimate conversations with someone who isn't his family and still feel like they'll stay with him. I mean, the only time that Dean ever expressed any sort of regret for the Gadriel possession was to Cass, not Sam. Even though, like, Sam was the one being possessed. Am I over that still? No, I'll never be over that. In fact, I think I will go to my grave being like, Dean, you fucked up so badly letting Gadriel ride co-pilot in Sam without letting him know. And Supernatural did very little to rectify that situation, and it will probably follow me to my grave. So thank you so much, Supernatural, for something that has continued to plague me and will probably always plague me. I'm not saying that Dean has never yelled at Cass before. He does that as well, okay? He yells at everyone. That's the Dean thing. Another thing that I think is really interesting to mention in this section is the prayer apology. First of all, Dean has wronged so many people in his life, Sam and Jack being 2 of those people. He has apologized to Sam and Jack before, but never have I ever seen Dean apologize in such a vulnerable and raw way. Dean struggles a lot with his emotions, and I feel like every time his anger gets out of control, Sam kind of lets it happen, which has never really led Dean to truly like introspect. Cass did not let Dean get away with the weak ass apology that he was trying to pull out of his ass. Dean actually listened to Cass's complaints and delivered not only a beautiful apology, but he thought about his anger and how it had affected people throughout his life. It's hard to acknowledge your flaws and the way you've hurt someone. You'd have to love someone a lot to be willing to face yourself like that. I feel like especially for Dean, who is so afraid that everyone around him will leave, that he plays a dangerous game of holding on so tightly and pushing away out of fear, it must be scary to introspect like that. He did that for Cass because losing him was not an option. Now, you can argue with me in the comments if you want to, but honestly, throughout the entire series, I have seen Dean apologize and own to some of his mistakes. However, I feel like Dean was able to still find justifications for his actions. Sorry for calling you a monster, Sam, and pushing you away out of fear instead of trying to help, but like, you were drinking demon blood, so my reaction was kind of justified. You know, that kind of deal. This time he took the blame because he was at fault and was emotionally raw. It felt so genuine, not just something he felt he needed to say, but something that he felt so passionately about. I'll talk later more about the prayer apology because that's a big moment, but this is like an additional thing to add on to just how like emotionally raw he can be with Cass. So the counter argument to your second piece of evidence, you know, you make some good points. And I will not argue that the prayer apology is a smoking gun for your side, which I'm sure you will use an entirely different point to make your argument of. But, you know, that being said, just because you are emotionally vulnerable with someone doesn't mean that you are in love with them. They have a close relationship, as does Dean with Sam. When you have a close relationship with someone, whether platonic or romantic, you are able to have those deep emotional talks. I have emotional vulnerability with my best friends. Doesn't mean I am in love with them. Though a compelling point, it's not enough to show he's in love with Cass. Piece of evidence number 3, the way he acts when Cass dies. Dean literally freaks out and breaks down when Cass dies. Now, Cass has temporarily died many times over the course of the show, but most of those deaths only lasted like an episode, so Dean didn't have to last that long without Cass. However, there was a stretch in season 13 where Cass was like dead. Like, he was presumed dead. And Dean had to deal with the consequences of that death, and let's just say it did not go well. Cass dies at the end of season 12. We get a shot where Dean alone is on his knees in front of Cass's dead corpse, looking at the sky in agony. We get this beautiful scene where Dean alone prepares Cass's body for his funeral pyre, and he's so heartbroken. There's this scene where Dean is yell praying at Chuck to bring Cass back. Dean is like so angry and miserable after Cass dies. He's mad at Jack and threatens to kill him because he blames Jack for Cass's death, as well as Mary being stuck in the alternate dimension. But like, we're only really talking about Dean and Cass right now. So he literally yells to Sam at one point that he's lost any sort of hope. He commits suicide to get information for a case, risking his life for literally no good reason. Like, he did not have to die. Okay, he could have done literally anything else. He decides to die like on a routine case to get information for some ghosts as to where bodies were being held. Dean. Completely unnecessary. He was just so depressed. Then get this, Cass comes back from the dead and suddenly Dean is like so happy. And even Sam makes a comment about how happy Dean is compared to before Cass came back. Dean goes to this cowboy town and cosplays as a cowboy with Cass and tells Cass how happy he is to have him back. The cowboys are kind of gay, guys. They literally dressed up. Well, Dean dressed up in like a full sheriff's outfit and then he gave Cass a cowboy hat. However, that's a little bit gay. And then through the rest of the season, despite his mom still being in an alternate dimension and then his adoptive son being in that same alternate dimension, he is never as low as when Cass is dead. I can't even tell you how Dean immediately became like so much better after Cass came back. And the only thing that changed was Cass coming back from the dead. The situation was literally almost the exact same, but Cass was back. Query me this. Tell me that's not gay. Tell me that's not like him being in love with him. Okay? Tell me that's not. Like, if that's not evidence that Dean loves Cass, then I don't know what else to tell you. Because, like, they really wrote that entire arc of Cass being dead to show exactly one thing. And that was that Dean loved Cass a lot. Because there was really no reason for Cass to be dead that long. And it really didn't have much effect on the plot. It was just to show that Dean was miserable when Cass was dead. And then was great when Cass was back. So, like, I got the message, Supernatural. I got it. I see it. The interesting part about how this narrative was framed, additionally, is that Sam was just, like, vibing. Like, I don't want to hate on Sam, but, like, he was upset. But he was coping, like, well enough, all things considered. Meanwhile, Dean died at the slightest need for it. So you see the difference? And also, I would like to point out that, like, Sam lost hope later on when Cass was alive, whereas Dean maintained hope. Even though Sam lost hope when Jack and Mary were basically unreachable, but Dean lost hope when Cass was dead. So I'm just saying, you're saying something to me, Supernatural, and like it's very clear in your narrative. This is canon. This is not something I'm making up. So like this is the main instance of Cass dying in the show where you can clearly see how much this hurt Dean. Because as I said before, a lot of his other deaths were like one episode off. So like he was back very quickly. So Dean didn't have to deal with that for like long term. But another main death was at the beginning of season 7. So Cass blows up from the Leviathan fun times in his stomach. If you know what I'm talking about, then you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, maybe go back and rewatch season 6 and 7. Now, this death was a little harder to pinpoint because the show was very much avoiding talking about it, and Dean was angry and betrayed by Cass. However, we know that Dean kept Cass's trench coat in his trunk for like months. Like, that's canon. I didn't make that up. He gives it back to Cass when he finds out he's alive. Like, months later. It's just been in his trunk. I mean, I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Dean did struggle with Cass's death, but it was just very subtle. There was a time at the beginning of season 8 when he thought Cass was dead and had actually changed the course of events in Purgatory to blame himself for Cass's supposed death instead of admitting the truth that Cass had chosen to stay in Purgatory. He literally changed his perception of an entire event to blame himself because he couldn't handle that Cass had chosen to stay behind. Like, he truly just blamed himself. I mean, oh my god. Do you know how much trauma it takes to alter an event that extremely? That was a very angsty time. And Dean, like, refused to talk about it. There was that time at the beginning of season 9 when Cass was human and got stabbed by the Reaper he slept with, and Dean was so distressed by this death that he had to cradle Cass's face and touch his thigh. Because, I mean, it's now or never. He's dying. You have to get the touches you want. You know what I mean? Like, and then Gadriel brought Cass back from the dead quite quickly, and Dean yelled at Cass to never do that again. Cass's last death, though poorly handled, did show Dean grieving poorly. Like, Dean drove for like 12 hours to Sam and Jack with a bloody Cass handprint on his jacket after crying on the dungeon floor and avoiding Sam's calls. First of all, let's just acknowledge something here. Dean avoiding Sam's calls is just something that doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. He was crushed. Dean loves Sam and is overprotective, maybe to a fault, of Sam. Him avoiding Sam's calls, he was crushed. He'd have to be like so emotionally traumatized and crushed to avoid Sam's calls. Like, what if Sam was calling that he's in danger or something? You know what I mean? And then when he was asked what happened to Cass, he couldn't give the full story because it was too hard. Like, he couldn't do it. Like, you could see in his eyes, like, he couldn't say more than he saved me. You know, like, he couldn't even explain it. It was too hard. And then he got drunk and he rewatched the security camera footage in the dungeon all night. I just want to clarify something here. That's not like technically 100% canon, but it's implied canon because we know that the dungeon has security footage. We saw that before. They have a camera down there. So we're assuming it's recording footage. So Dean is watching something on his laptop like all night and he's getting drunk watching it. So we can only assume that he was not binge watching Netflix, but rewatching Cass's death over and over and over again. And I think it actually makes a lot of sense if you rewatch that scene. Like if you didn't initially get that impression, maybe you watch that scene and then kind of like think in your head that that's what he's doing, and then it all kind of clicks. Like it's not like 100% canon. It's very much like if you remembered the dungeon security footage and you kind of know Dean, it makes a lot of sense. It's just, they didn't confirm it. Like we never know what he's actually watching, but we can only assume that's what he's watching. And also, Dean has very high alcohol tolerance. So for him to get that sloshed, like that he passed out on the floor, he drank excessive amounts of alcohol. Like excessive. Now, Dean, just because of the traumatic experiences he has had in his life, starting with Mary dying when he was 4, he is really affected by the people he loves dying. The only reactions that even come close or surpass that of Cass dying are Sam, John, and Mary. Now, perhaps this category isn't exclusively romantic in nature, but like this coupled with all the evidence does lead towards him being in love with Cass. His highly emotional and horrible ways of grieving Cass's death is indicative of how hard that death hits him. Death is hard for every human being to deal with because when you love someone, their death is the worst thing that can happen to you. If anything, this just proves that Dean loves Cass the same level that he loves Blood Family and Bobby, but I consider Bobby part of Blood Family. That's huge because the most important thing to Dean is family, and very few people have ever made it to that level who weren't blood related. Like Bobby made it to that level. That's pretty much it. It could be argued that Cass was the only one to ever make it to that level, like, because Bobby was more of a surrogate father. Like, this is just like a friend. That means something. Counter argument number 3. You know what? I don't even really have a counter argument. I'll give you this one actually. You already addressed my counter argument in your own argument. I don't think I can argue against what happened at the beginning of season 13 in terms of Dean's reaction to Cass's death and Cass coming back. That was some good old-fashioned queerbaiting at its finest. It doesn't mean that Dean's in love with Cass though. Just that he loves Cass. And that the Supernatural writers are mean. But I mean, I am the Supernatural writers and I know that I'm mean, so just know I was just queerbaiting you. If only they would admit it, huh? Piece of evidence number 4. He forgives him for his mistakes. So in season 6, Cass betrays Sam and Dean. He ends up being the one that brought Sam back from the cage in hell, soulless, kind of by accident. And he was in league with Crowley the entire time, trying to open Purgatory to gobble up some souls and become supercharged, and then, like, take over heaven, and then Crowley was gonna, like, take over hell. Cass's reasons for doing this are very well explained in a Cass Tell All episode where he lays out all of his reasons. Basically, he was desperate to stop Raphael from taking over heaven, and he wanted to give angels free will. He also didn't want the angels to try to start the apocalypse again, to stop Dean from having to go through that again. He had good intentions. However, as these things mostly go, in order to put his intentions into action, he had to do some bad things. Once you do one bad thing to justify a good thing, you fall down a deep, dark tunnel of moral gray actions. Eventually, you can cross the line, and that's what happened to Cass. I would also like to point out that Dean had retired from hunting when he was living with Lisa. Cass was going to go ask Dean for help to navigate the situation. However, he didn't want to pull Dean back into life. Therefore, in order to avoid doing this, he made a deal with Crowley and allowed Crowley to use Sam and Samuel, their grandfather, as his monster hunting pair, all to give Dean the life he thought Dean wanted. This is not the video about how much Cass loves Dean, but can we just for 1 second? He loves him so much. I don't think anyone has ever loved anyone as much as Cass loves Dean, and that's insane. Anyways, obviously Dean was upset by this betrayal, as one would be. Cass became God, and Dean was betrayed. He wasn't betrayed that Cass was trying to gobble up some souls and become superpowered. No, he was betrayed that Cass, his best friend, lied to him and didn't trust him and wouldn't listen to him. This is very Dean. You know, like he gets betrayed for like personal reasons. Despite what is actually a huge betrayal to their relationship, Dean still cared enough to keep Cass's trench coat in his car for like months after Cass blew up. Then when Cass came back, he still loved Cass enough to want him to live his human life oblivious to what he did. Even though Dean really could have used an angel's help at that moment. Like, they'd be struggling. Because Bobby had died, and Bobby was like really useful, and they were kind of stupid without Bobby. So they needed some superpower on their side, because they were failing. Bobby was too much of an ex-machina. So, by the end of season 7, despite Cass being crazy, Dean has forgiven him enough that in season 8, he looks tirelessly for Cass after he disappears in purgatory. Now, that's not to say that Cass didn't fight to win Dean's forgiveness. Cass apologized multiple times, showed true repentance, and made it up to Dean by taking away Sam's Lucifer crazy. However, for someone like Dean to not only forgive Cass, who, by the way, again, isn't blood family, and then actually grow closer with Cass after the betrayal is huge. There are a few other small moments throughout the series, like when Cass fucks up and takes the angel tablet, leaving Dean. Dean is mad by this action, again, because Cass didn't trust him and left him, not because he took the angel tablet. It was more like personal again. But he forgives him quite easily, actually. You know, it may be bad writing, or it may be how much Dean loves Cass. You decide. It's usually 50-50 with Supernatural. Another striking moment is in season 12 when Cass betrays Sam and Dean for Jack, and before that, to work with the angels to like kill Jack. You know, the mixtape scene. Dean, though he is pissed, actually has this moment where he's fixing Cass's car that broke down after Cass stole the Impala. I just want to remind everyone that Dean once said if anyone stole the Impala, he would literally like torture and then kill them. He was okay with Cass stealing the Impala. Dean loves that car. Loves that car. Mostly probably because that car is like his last connection to his dad. Maybe I should do a video on why Dean loves the Impala so much. Perhaps. But my point being, Dean has canonically admitted that like if anyone ever steals the Impala, he literally will like murder them. Cass, on the other hand, if Cass steals the Impala, he's just slightly peeved. I mean, that's actually super indicative of love. Anyways, he could have stolen a car. You know, there were other cars in that motel parking lot. They're too cheap for a hotel. He's done it before. But instead, he took the time to fix Cass's car because he knew Cass liked that car. Even though, like, Dean kind of shits on that car. And then while he was fixing the car, Sam was all like, I don't understand what's gotten into Cass lately. And then Dean correctly identifies the fact that Cass has had a hard time lately and he probably just wanted to do what he thought was best. Dean actually, instead of being angry about it, tried to understand Cass's feelings, which is kind of like unheard of for Dean on the most part. Though Dean has forgiven many people's mistakes throughout the show, and Sam has forgiven the exact same mistakes, I think it actually says something that Dean's relationship with Cass remained close despite some major setbacks, especially given the fact that Cass isn't like blood related to him. This is significant because Dean tends to forgive Sam using the "we're family" line, yet he considers Cass to be family, but the point is he chooses to continue to view Cass as family, but he doesn't get to choose with Sam. I'm not saying he doesn't love Sam. Don't come at me. He loves his brother a lot, okay? I know this. I'm just saying he can't choose Sam to be like his family, but he can choose Cass. So, just remember that. My counter argument to your piece of evidence number 4. You know, I actually can't argue too much with the points being made here. Dean is so forgiving with Sam because they're family. Dean chooses to continue to keep Cass in his life despite Cass making mistakes, and some of those mistakes have hurt both Dean and Sam. Dean does see something in Cass and wants to keep him around. That being said, you did touch on this, but Sam has equally been hurt by Cass's action, though the show won't focus so much on it, and he easily forgives Cass most of the time. Sam views Cass as his best friend, so of course he would forgive him and give him a chance to make it up to them. Another thing that I think you are discounting is that Cass works hard to earn that forgiveness and tries to fix his mistakes. He genuinely shows remorse and will apologize and own up to his mistakes to Dean. He tries to make things right, which I think is more than most people in Dean's life have tried to do. Dean is super hard to deal with when he's angry or has felt betrayed. Cass will, for the most part, put up with that behavior from Dean and work to get his trust back. That's what he did in season 7 after, fucking up with the Leviathans. That's what he did in season 8 after fucking up with the Angel Tablet. He went to a corner store to buy everything Dean liked. The only exceptions being season 12 with Jack and season 15 with the whole sizzling snake debacle, which was directly linked to Jack. The thing is that Dean knows that Cass will fight for him and stand by his side most of the time. Dean also knows that if Cass isn't doing that, there may be a good reason. Well, he knows most of the time at least. What I'm saying is that though this is a good point, it is predicated on Cass earning Dean's trust and respect. My counter argument to your counter argument, I will give you this. Cass has earned Dean's forgiveness many times. However, I would like to point out something to do with Sam's forgiveness. Sam has no backbone, like zero backbone, and will literally forgive everyone so easily. Now, that is partially due to his forgiving nature, but also because Sam has made mistakes and wants to give people the same chances to make up for the mistakes that he got. I'm not shitting on Sam. This is the reason why he forgives so easily. He wanted to help Nick so badly because he was in the same place when Lucifer possessed him. So, he doesn't forgive not only because he doesn't have a backbone, but he also just forgives really easily because he's made so many mistakes and he's, very cognizant of giving other people other chances. But also, Sam just doesn't want to fight sometimes. He just gets tired of it. It's a little drama. I think it's unfair to compare Dean and Sam's forgiveness levels because I think they are different people. For instance, when it came to Jack killing Mary, Sam was way quicker to forgive Jack and move on. He understood the lack of soul situation and was able to put aside his hurt and welcome Jack back. Dean, on the other hand, was a hot mess when it came to his feelings for Jack. The main thing being he could never fully forgive Jack for accidentally killing Mary. He didn't have to forgive him. I want to make that clear. However, Jack was going above and beyond to make it up to both of them. Boy was literally gonna blow himself up to get their forgiveness, and Dean still didn't see that as enough. Whereas with Cass, he actually did blame Cass a lot for Mary's death, which I think was unfair. But Dean at one point probably put Jack and Cass at almost equal levels of blame. It didn't help that Cass was on team not kill Jack, which caused a lot of tension between Dean and Cass. However, Dean did not only forgive Cass, but actually apologized for his behavior. Now, I know it's unfair to compare Cass and Jack in Dean's eyes, but I do think it's important to point that out because he never really did that with Jack. Well, I wasn't expecting a counter argument, but, you do make a good point about Sam and Dean being different people. However, I think Dean's forgiveness of Cass is just not the same as his forgiveness towards Jack. Does Dean have a soft spot for Cass? Sure, but people have soft spots for their best friends and brothers. Piece of evidence number 5, his overprotective streak. For the majority of the series, Cass is an angel. A super being who is immortal and immune to most weapons. You wouldn't know this by the way that Dean acts if Cass is in danger, or hasn't been heard of from in a few days, or hangs out with other angels. Oh no, Cass has disappeared in purgatory. I must find him and hunt day and night because he could be in danger. Is he a powerful angel? Yes. This is irrelevant because I, the human Dean Winchester, can protect him with my weapons better than he can with his angel powers. I know that there have been instances where Cass has been a little bit not right in the head or where his powers were fading. However, Cass is capable of taking care of himself probably better than human Dean can. Dean still acts like an overprotective husband for most of the series. Remember in season 12 when Cass went to go visit the angels? And to be fair, he was ghosting Dean, but Dean was so scared that Cass was dead and was so unimpressed that Cass went to go visit the angels. Sam was like, great to have you back, Cass. So glad you're okay. And Dean was like, how dare you make me think that you were in danger? Unacceptable. I was so scared. It's honestly like so ridiculous. Like, I love it, but like, Dean, honey, chill. When Cass is hurt too, like, he will drop everything to be by his side, and he will literally dote on him when he's sick. I love him. Remember when Lucifer was possessing Dean, and this man was like, even though we may need Lucifer, I want Cass back. He's in danger. My point is, this drama hoe is so overprotective of his angel boyfriend, who can like take care of himself and is way more powerful than Dean. And before you say anything, yes, there is some evidence of Dean not being overprotective, like when he kicked Cass out of the bunker for Gadriel. Yes, he is also overprotective of Sam, but that is his older brother syndrome kicking in, okay? I would dropkick anyone who touched my little sister. As an older sibling, you're just overprotective of your younger sibling. With Dean, that is multiplied because of trauma and him playing the parental role to Sam. Dean is also more overprotective of other people he cares about, but all those people are human and hunters that he feels responsible towards because he brought them into the life. He is protective of Jack, but that's his adoptive son. But he also pimped Jack out a lot for his powers. Anyways, my point is, yes, okay, Dean is overprotective of other people, but he is extremely overprotective of Cass. But like, come on. Watch season 12, episode 10, and tell me Dean isn't the most dramatic, overprotective husband ever. So my counter-argument to your fifth piece of evidence, I have seen season 12, episode 10, and, cannot argue with your argument. That was someone else. However, I will point out that Dean as a character is just, like, naturally overprotective of, like, the world. Dean just doesn't want anyone he loves dying or getting hurt. He also doesn't want random victims of the week to die or be hurt. He's just naturally one of those people who wants to protect you, and it's in his nature. Dean, if he cares about you, will do everything in his power to protect you, including push you away from him. I can't believe I'm making this argument for you, but have you noticed how Dean has never really tried to push Cass away for his own safety? He did when Cass was human, but like, other than that, he never gave the Dean speech of, you don't want to be with me, everyone around me dies, or I'm leaving you to protect you from myself. Cass is the first person we see Dean actually cling to besides Sam in the series. Damn, I can't argue with this on you on this. In fact, I've made another argument for you in my counter argument. You get this point. Doesn't mean you are correct. Piece of evidence number 6. Dean's fear of abandonment be flaring up with Cass. Thank you. I knew you would be able to argue with that one. Okay, so this point is very similar to the point that I just made, but this isn't about losing Cass in like a mortality sense or watching him get hurt. This is far more important to explore. For most people, watching someone you love die or get hurt is a horrible experience. For most people, you want to protect the people you love from harm and fear that one day something bad will happen to them. Dean's fear of abandonment absolutely includes losing someone to death. I mean, look at Dean and all of his trauma. But I want to talk about the other side of Dean's fear of abandonment. The side that fears everyone around him will leave him willingly. This gets presented in Dean in one of 3 ways. The first being angry towards the person in an attempt to protect himself from their rejection, he pushes them away. Or him attempting to lift that person up. Or him keeping them close through a 360 of his emotions. Dean has displayed his fear of abandonment quite often with Cass to the point where, like, Cass is rivaling Sam at this point for Dean's fear of abandonment reactions. An obvious example of Dean pushing away Cass with anger to protect himself from Cass abandoning him comes after Cass leaves with the tablet and Dean was like all emotionally vulnerable. Dean was just upset that Cass didn't trust him and truly didn't want to get hurt by Cass again, so his walls went up and he pushed Cass away. Another good example of that actually comes from season 15. There's this moment in episode 2 where Dean and Cass are talking and Dean expresses how he doesn't know what's real or not. Cass tells him they're real. Dean seems to doubt this. This kind of made me realize that, yeah, Dean was pissed at Cass initially because of the sizzling of snake instant. However, instead of attempting to work past it, he doubted Cass and his relationship. So he did what Dean does best, and he pushed Cass away. I don't think it was until Cass willingly came back and expressed how he left because Dean pushed him away that Dean realized Cass was never going to abandon him willingly. Cass was not in his life because Chuck dictated he should be. Cass was in his life because Cass chose him. He literally fell in love with exactly one person in all of his very, very long life, and it was Dean. Some great examples of Dean lifting Cass up after fearing Cass would abandon him again come in season 8 and season 11, when Cass made a decision to actively leave Dean for the greater good. Dean in those moments wanted Cass to know that he wanted him to stay, that he needed him. I mean, for God's sake, the man was crying on his knees saying that he needed Cass. We all remember that tomb scene. Cinematic poetry right there. We cannot forget Dean crying in purgatory, apologizing in order to make sure Cass knew that he did want him near him. Season 15, prayer apology. This one is rare for Dean to express, but like, my boy does it all the time with Cass, via reassurances that he's glad Cass is there, prayers saying he wants to see him, straight up saying he needs him. Yeah, he expressed gratitude to Sam when Sam saves him or helps him, but like, when in a non-life or death scenario has Dean ever just told Sam that he was glad to have him there? It's a little bit sad. Maybe I'm just not remembering it, but like, I think it's pretty rare. I mean, I'm being a bit dramatic, okay? But come on, like, tell me I'm wrong. Lastly, let's look at the reaction number 3, which is a 360 in emotions. This is quite common for Dean. Dean will be like angry, and then he realizes the person is retreating. He's like, oops, no, I'm fine. It's fine. It's fine. Please don't leave. Sometimes he actually can just move on. Other times he will explode about it later. I feel like a good example of this is when Cass leaves to go help Kelly give birth and Dean finds them and he's like, it's fine, Cass, we'll work through this. He was so pissed for a minute there. But like, imagine losing Cass. Unimaginable. Now, let's look for a second at Dean's romantic track record. A bunch of hookups and Lisa. Dean doesn't have romantic relationships that last long. Probably due to fear of abandonment. I can tell you right now, it's hard to date when you have fear of abandonment. You fear getting close to someone because you know that there is a good chance they'll eventually leave you. You can't help but think of the end instead of enjoying the beginning and the journey together. For Dean especially, there's obviously the fear that his romantic partners will die because of his hunting. Lisa only happened because Dean left hunting, but he wasn't truly happy because he left a part of himself behind. The relationship didn't survive hunting, but I think for Dean, Lisa was more of a dream than a reality. Sometimes your what-ifs aren't necessarily what you want. After Lisa, I feel like Dean just gave up on having a relationship. I mean, that's his prerogative if he doesn't want one. But Sam did mention something that once that was a good point. That yes, I did in another context criticize Sam for saying, but that's because I was talking about something else. I'm just a walking contradiction. In this moment, Sam tells Dean that he could settle down with a hunter, someone who understands life, and Dean kind of brushes it off. Here's the thing, I feel like Dean was so broken internally and his fear of abandonment was so strong that he feared ever taking a chance with Cass. This is the main argument, isn't it? If Dean was ever in love with Cass, how come he never did anything about it? How come he pushed Cass towards other women, as though Dean's a woman? Okay, how come he pushed Cass towards like dating women, And the answer is, if you don't make yourself vulnerable in a relationship, then you can't be hurt when it ends. Perhaps he feared losing Cass so much that he never allowed himself to give in to his feelings. He probably also thought that Cass didn't love him and that he wasn't worthy of love, but that's kind of not the argument being made here. So try to counter that. So my counter argument to your 6 pieces of evidence. You're not wrong. This is 100% true. Like, why is Dean like this? However, I just want to point out that he does the same things with Sam and with Mary too for a minute. Though I will admit it is quite rare that Dean feels this fear of abandonment that strongly towards someone. There is precedent with Sam for his feelings when he left for university. So like I could use the same argument that I've been using this entire time, which is that he does the same thing with Sam. But I'm actually going to argue something else. I think that we have to remember that Dean has never really had a real friend before Cass. Like a best friend who will stick by you. If I was Dean, I don't think I'd want to lose that either. He never got to stay somewhere long enough as a kid to have stable relationships form outside of his family. He never really bonded with hunters beyond work. Then along comes Cass, who is like his friend, his real friend, his best friend, someone who's sticking by him and continuously is there. Dean develops other relationships throughout the course of the show for sure, but none like Cass. They don't even come close to Cass. Whatever that relationship may be, that is a relationship that he probably is so scared to lose, especially because he's never had that depth of that relationship. It could be romantic feelings that drive his fear of abandonment, and his romantic track record would speak to that. But also just fear of losing the second closest person to him besides his brother. You know? There's a practical understanding of the situation as well that isn't romantically predicated. We need to remember these things. Shippers, friendships are also very strong bonds that people don't want to lose. Piece of evidence number 7. He made a mixtape. I actually think he'd make a good point. However, maybe he didn't want to risk the relationship by making it romantic. Ever think of that? Anyways, next point. This will be short and sweet. I would just like to remind everyone that Dean made Cass a mixtape. Mixtapes are traditionally romantic, right? Like, Dean knows this. He watches movies. Cass probably doesn't know this, but Dean does. Dean made him a literal mixtape. Like a tape, like an old tape with music on it. Not a CD. Where was Cass gonna play that? Okay? I bet he just carried it in his coat, having no idea how to use it, but would never get rid of it because Dean made it for him. I can't believe we never got to see Dean give Cass that mixtape. Supernatural is cruel. She's cruel. But we did see Cass try to return it, you know? So we know it exists. I just want to make something very clear here. They don't celebrate holidays, guys. Okay? He just randomly gave it to him. It wasn't a gift for like Christmas or something, because they don't celebrate Christmas. He just gave him a mixtape. Okay? Like, Cass doesn't have a birthday. So, like, it wasn't a birthday present. So Dean just unprompted gave him a mixtape. I mean, guys, this is literally romantic. To just, like, unprompted give someone a mixtape. Like, you literally can't argue otherwise. It just is. It literally just is. In every single movie, when the guy has a crush on a girl in like the old movies, he like makes a mixtape for her. So like, Supernatural, are you telling me that Dean has a crush on Cass and is like giving him this present in hopes that he will like pay attention to him? I mean, guy, like, just explain to me, Supernatural, what exactly you thought was gonna happen with the mixtape. So, like, I really can't argue with your 7th point. We, the Supernatural writers, we were queerbaiting you, you know? I'll admit it too. It doesn't mean that Dean's in love with Cass. It just admits that, yeah, you know, that can be a strike in your point list towards that for sure. Evidence number 8, the prayer apology. Ha! See, there are some points that you just can't refute. Which brings me to my next point. So, like, remember in season 15, and Dean got on his knees in purgatory, and he was, like, crying, and he gave, like, the best prayer apology to ever grace purgatory? I mean, it's probably the only prayer apology, but, like, my point still stands. The bar is high, so like I wouldn't try to apologize in purgatory if I were you. because like Dean's kind of set a really high standard. Now, Dean has apologized to Cass a bit during the series. He does so with like little to no prompting sometimes. He genuinely does admit his faults with Cass most of the time. Of course, sometimes Dean apologizes in like a roundabout way that doesn't require the words "I'm sorry." This prayer apology, though, needed to be explored on its own because it's such a testament of how much Dean loves Cass. Like, previously to the prayer apology, Dean and Cass had been fighting and had temporarily broken up, with Cass leaving them to go fishing. That's canon. And then Cass came back because he decided he was going to fight for that relationship. Can I just say, if someone treated me the way that Dean treated Cass, I don't think I'd come back. I am not by any means saying that Cass was wrong to come back. I'm just saying he had a very high tolerance for Dean bullshit and loved him despite all of it. Anyways, despite Cass coming back, things are awkward between Dean and Cass, and they are sniping at each other. They're both just acting like jilted lovers, and they are both so hurt by the other's actions. They seem kind of like a lost cause. And then in a surprising turn of events, Supernatural closes an open plotline sufficiently and solves a fight that started. I mean, that's fucking rare. Supernatural actually resolving a conflict properly is like virtually unheard of. They sometimes don't even solve their conflicts because they just make them forget about them, or they'll solve them with like bare minimum and that's it, and just like move on. It's like actually insane. So Sam and Eileen get kidnapped by Chuck at the same time that Adam/Michael opens a portal to Purgatory so they can get a Leviathan bloom to make another Mark of Cain, because we can never escape the Mark of Cain, ever. The point is, Dean and Cass need to go on an adventure through Purgatory alone, which is like their place. They're still sniping, but their sniping leads to them talking about how Dean treated Cass. Oh no, I'm sorry, my cat is now noticing the receptacle that's holding my phone that's recording this, and she is eyeing it like the little demon child she is. They're still sniping, but their sniping leads to them talking about how Dean treated Cass. Cass basically says that Dean's anger forced him to leave and that he was hurt that Dean didn't ask him to stay. Dean and Cass then get separated after Dean gets knocked out and Cass gets kidnapped by some Leviathans, as one does when you live in Supernatural. Dean wakes up without Cass, and he's so scared that Cass is gone, and the time left on their portal, it's closing. Did I not mention there is a time limit on that portal that doesn't line up properly with the rest of the events in the show? But who am I to say that Supernatural got their timeline wrong? Me, a mere mortal. This leads Dean to make a split-second decision. He didn't want his last moments with Cass to be them fighting. He was hurt by what Cass said and was afraid that Cass would die, thinking that Dean didn't care about him. So Dean says a prayer apology. So let's analyze that purgatory apology to prove that Dean is, in fact, in love with Cass. First thing I want to point out is just how soft this prayer apology is. Like, it's so intimate, and you can really tell that Dean meant every word he said. Like, Dean is so quiet and tame and like almost unsure. This is not our normal Dean. Dean is usually mildly aggressive and has a sassy retort. It's like in that moment he let down every barrier he has ever put up and poured his heart out to Cass because he just loves him so much. It was beautiful. Another thing I want to mention is that we learned back in season 4 that prayers can only be heard by an angel if the person praying has faith in that angel. So the fact that Cass heard Dean means that Dean has faith in him. This makes that prayer even more special because before this moment, Dean had been really angry at Cass and saying things that brought his trustworthiness into question. One of my favorite lines of this entire apology is one of the first things he says, and it's that he should have stopped Cass. This shows that Dean loved Cass enough to reflect on his mistakes and realize how his actions led to Cass abandoning him. Cass never wanted to abandon him. Cass was just doing what he thought Dean would want based on Dean's behavior. Dean, upon realizing this, doesn't want Cass to think that he doesn't want him around. It's so powerful that he starts off with this line. Also, Dean hardly ever admits fault, so this is big. He then says that Cass is his best friend and he shouldn't have let him go. What I want to focus on here is the best friend part. Now, you can choose to interpret this line in one of two ways. The first way, I'm sure my adversary in this debate will bring up, so I'll focus on the second interpretation. Basically, in the past, Dean has called Cass his brother, which, some offense to the Wincest shippers is not great for the ship. In this scene, however, he calls Cass his best friend. The person you are in love with can be your best friend. In fact, it probably makes your relationship healthier if you guys are best friends. By him saying that Cass is his best friend instead of the cop-out lines of family or heaven forbid brother, could in fact be Dean letting his barriers down for this prayer and acknowledging that Cass's relationship with him is different from the other relationships that he has. It's more intimate in a sense. This isn't a crystal clear argument though. He has referred to Cass as his best friend before. This is not new. I think it's just important to point out that word choice is significant because he could have easily said family. Once again, some self-reflecting on Dean's part. Side note, I just love this prayer apology. Not just for Dean and Cass' potential, but just for Dean as a character. He goes on to say that he didn't want to admit that he was wrong, so that's why he let Cass go. I want to once again point out that Dean is a stubborn hoe. He's my stubborn hoe, though, so I love him. But admitting he's wrong, that's kind of rare. He still hasn't admitted he was wrong to Sam's face for letting Gadriel ride co-pilot in him without his consent. However, the thought of losing Cass, and more importantly, having Cass die without knowing how Dean regretted his actions and still loved him, I mean, come on. When Dean does admit fault, he always finds a way to justify it to himself as well. Yes, I did this bad thing, but look, I saved your life. In this moment, what is so important is Dean takes full responsibility. He doesn't make an excuse. He cuts to the point, and that's really powerful. He was really torn up, thinking that he hurt Cass and made Cass think that Dean didn't love and want him around. That hurt him so much that he genuinely felt profound guilt and sadness and expressed it in such a sincere way. He even admits it was because of his stubbornness. His love for Cass led to that character development right there. Do we even need more proof at this point? Side note, in my notes that I took for this scene, my extremely detailed notes after watching this scene maybe 20 times frame by frame, I wrote the line, "He flourished like a Leviathan bloom after a Leviathan corpse starts decomposing." Take that in. Take that in. Now, I can't tell if that was straight poetry for the history books or a reason why I should be banned for ever writing again. Straight to jail. I can't tell. It's kind of a fire line when you think about it, but also throw me away, lock me away and throw away the key too. I just wanted to mention that because I was rereading the notes myself to pull back on my previous frame by frame analysis to get points for this video. I saw that line and I was on something that day. I don't know what I was on, but boy, I need to get back on that cloud because life has not been that great since I wrote that line. Anyways, if this scene wasn't already beautiful and vulnerable enough, Dean literally falls to his knees and holds back tears next to a tree because he's so upset at himself and at the thought of losing Cass. In Purgatory, where at any moment he could be attacked. By the way, where were all the monsters when he was having his emotional vulnerability moment? Just a question. I mean, did they all ship Dean and Cass as well? You know, perhaps when Dean and Cass were in purgatory together for like a year, the monsters there really started to ship them because they really like saw that bond. And so, like, when Dean was making this big confession, they were like, guys, no, don't attack him. He's literally making a love confession right now. Like, this is what we wanted for our ship. Like, don't disturb him. That's my headcanon now. Cool. Cool. Anyways, this man was so moved by this apology that he fell to his knees crying. Crying, Mac. My other cat came in. Crying. She's like, what the fuck are you doing? Mac, do you want to be on camera? Maybe she will be on camera. Are you gonna go up there? No. She's like, I don't want to be part of this. Oh, Luna's here now. When I tell you, he regrets so deeply what he said to Cass and that hurt that he caused Cass. It's like so powerful. Like, he just loves him so much. It upsets him so much to think that Cass could die thinking Dean hated him. Another thing is that he looks around for Cass, like he was hoping Cass would like appear in that moment, and he doesn't. And this just devastates Dean even more because he now thinks like, oh my god, Cass is dead. And when Cass dies, Dean dies inside. This is canon. See my previous argument. Then what is probably one of the most beautiful things? Baby, what? What? Do you ship Dean and Cass? Yeah. That's good to know. Well, it's good. Yeah, do you ship them? Oh. Yeah, I'm so glad. Come here. Oh. You bad cat. Come here. This is Luna. She is the #1 Dean and Cass shipper. Are you the #1 Dean and Cass shipper? Then what is probably one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen grace my screen? Bless your heart, Jensen. You acted the living hell out of this scene. Like, give this man every award for this scene alone. He did amazing. Dean actually acknowledges his anger issues. Like, this has never happened before to the extent that it did in this scene. Dean sat there and introspected on how his anger has hurt other people and how he hates that he does that to the people he loves. Now, this isn't a Dean character analysis. I have an entire video that addresses this, so you can go watch part 6 of my Supernatural series. It's basically just character analysis because I only focus on the main ones, but I go in depth. So I won't go in depth here. I will say that I think as someone who understands Dean's anger issues, it takes someone you care about deeply being hurt by your anger to make you realize there's a problem that needs to be fixed. For Dean, I guess it was realizing that his anger towards Cass pushed Cass away from him. The one thing that he was so afraid would happen, it happened because he made it happen. Let's move on. He says that he forgives Cass. Of course he forgives Cass. This line is so powerful. Both Dean and Cass have fucked up in general and in terms of their relationship. The thing is that every time they both fuck up, they forgive each other. They just love each other so much. They're able to move past big betrayals. I think the biggest example is that Dean did forgive Cass for his season 6 betrayal. This is really important because that was like a genuine betrayal. And for Dean to say with conviction that of course he forgives Cass, like, it made me almost cry. Like, that level of love where you can move past mistakes that the other has made and even build a strong relationship is commitment to wanting that person in your life. In this moment, Dean's love is unbreakable. It just shows how, despite even being so mad at Cass, there wasn't a moment where he stopped loving him. The conviction and sincerity that he says that he forgives Cass, and basically says he'll always forgive Cass, is just like true love. Then he says that he's sorry, that it took him until this moment to say that apology. He like chokes up saying it, because he definitely thinks that Cass is dead, which again makes his apology even more profound because it really was a shot in the dark, but Dean couldn't not try. He regrets so much that he may have missed his opportunity to ever make up properly with Cass, who he loves a lot. He then says sorry again, bringing our I'm sorry total to like 3 in like a minute, and I'm pretty sure that's a record for Dean. I don't think he's said 3 in a year before this moment. I'm just joking, y'all, but like also it's kind of accurate. That's the end of the prayer apology. It's so vulnerable and beautiful and truly an amazing piece of cinema, and they would have fucked on the spot if Cass had been there in person for that apology, and you cannot tell me otherwise. That is why it was done via prayer. Okay, that's literally the only reason. So that Supernatural could be like, oh, that's why they didn't kiss, guys. Then they leap into each other's arms upon seeing each other, and Dean is so soft. And when Cass is explaining how he got the Leviathan bloom, Dean is just like so happy and so supportive. He just has this look of like pure love on his face when Cass shows him the Leviathan bloom and like comments on how it's squished. Got like squished in his coat. Like Cass came through and Dean is like internally, this is my angel, I love him so much. At least in my headcanon. What I love most about this scene is that Dean could have not acknowledged the prayer apology, but he wanted to make sure that Cass had heard his apology, so he says he needs to say something. Cass shuts him down because Boo can't reach that true happiness just yet. Anyways, there's this moment where they just stare at each other and you're like, are you gonna kiss? And then they don't. And it's maddening. Anyways, Dean's so in love with Cass. He lost him for like 5 minutes in purgatory and had to dramatically cry on the ground and pray apologize. Beat that bitch. My counter argument to your 8th point. I am so glad that you brought up the fact that that scene has 2 interpretations, because of course this is a show that we the Supernatural writers have written to live and breathe queerbaiting. Which means every scene, especially this one, has a double entendre. For me, when I first watched this scene, I loved it for so many different reasons. However, none of them were for confirmation of Dean being in love with Cass. This to me was just a beautiful apology to his best friend. This to me was Dean having this miraculous character growth and admitting his mistakes because he didn't want his best friend thinking he didn't love him. It was such an amazing scene, but not because it's the definitive proof that Dean is in love with Cass, but because it was just such a sincere and heartfelt apology. I understand why people immediately jump to this confirming Dean's feelings, because the scene is so intimate, but isn't that what every apology should be like? Sincere and intimate and from the heart. He called Cass his best friend and was apologizing because he loves his best friend platonically. A la the Supernatural writers and what we want you to think 50% of the time. Piece of evidence number 9, the stare. I mean, if you really want to interpret things so literal, then I guess it's like your prerogative, but what's the fun of that? So my next point, I feel like we just need to talk about briefly. So like they stare at each other a lot. I mean, just like dramatically stare at each other. Sometimes when the other person's not looking, I mean, they just can't seem to keep their eyes off of each other. Like most of their staring gets interrupted, but what would happen if they just continued to stare at each other? Like would they kiss? Only Jack knows. But I'm just saying, they really like looking soulfully into each other's eyes. They also like to really look soulfully at each other when the other person's like not looking at them. But mostly Cass does that with Dean. It's kind of rare for Dean. But like sometimes Dean will be like cradling Cass's cheek and staring soulfully into his eyes. Because that's what platonic bros do, But also people in love do that too. So like, I'm just saying, man, the Supernatural writers were on something else, huh? Counter argument number 9. First of all, I live a very fun life. Thank you very much. As a Supernatural writer, I live a very fun life of breaking people's dreams. Also, your entire argument is based on the fact that they look at each other. So like, people look at each other all the time. You aren't in love with the grocery store clerk when you look into his eyes to pay for your groceries. Okay? Dean just like staring soulfully at people. It's just part of his character, okay? You have absolutely nothing here. I have been very nice so far, but this point is stupid. Piece of evidence number 10, the nickname. Who pissed in your cornflakes this morning? So bitter about people who were in love staring at each other. Anyways, my next argument is that Dean gave Cass's nickname. Cass literally so quickly, okay? Like, I believe he first called him Cass in the Time Travel episode in season 4, where Cass took Dean back in time to meet his parents and then to learn about size, little demon blood origin, and then, you know, to stop Sam from his demon blood antics, which was like early in the season. Dean, you literally just met this guy and you're already giving him a nickname. On top of that, this nickname is used by like literally everyone. Like, this becomes his name unless you're an angel or some demons. Dean likes giving out nicknames. Yes, I will give you that. But this nickname transcends Dean's own personal use. Like, Dean gives nicknames, but only uses them himself. Like, Sammy is only used by Dean. And Dean will call people kid. But, like, no one else really joins him. Cass, on the other hand, is used by everyone. Like, that's the power of Dean giving Cass a nickname. It becomes Cass's name. I'm not quite sure what this proves exactly. I just wanted to point it out. Counter argument number 10. Okay, I mean, you're not technically wrong here. It is quite interesting that literally everyone uses Cass because Dean called Castiel Cass. I will point out though that Dean called Belphegor, the demon inhabiting his dead adopted son's body, Bell, after like a minute. So like, you have a pretty loose argument here, but I think you know that. You just wanted to point it out. So see, now we're at the point of your evidence where like, now you're just like pulling shit out of your ass. Piece of evidence number 11. The teasing. What I love most about how comfortable Dean feels around Cass is that he teases an angel who could like literally burn his brain from the inside out if he wanted to. Like, if Cass got annoyed with Dean's teasing, he could like kill him at any moment. Like, Dean first of all trusts and feels like he has a good enough relationship with Cass to do this. On top of that, I think Dean teases as a sign of affection. He just likes getting Cass ever so slightly annoyed, or he likes how Cass doesn't understand what he says to him. Like, Cass half the time doesn't understand what Dean's teasing him about, but he does it anyways. He probably thinks it's cute that Cass is confused or takes his remarks literally. Like, he still brings up the harp thing, and he just likes how Cass still doesn't quite get it's a joke and has to be like, no, I don't have a harp. Like, it's cute and it's playful. It's also like Dean treating Cass like a human almost. Like, he doesn't treat Cass like he treats the other angels. In fact, he doesn't like the other angels, but he only wants to have Cass by his side. But he also wants to be like playful and have a teasing relationship with him. Cass does like get annoyed with Dean sometimes though. So it's almost like Dean is like a little kid who thinks a girl is cute in his class and he like starts stealing her pencils to get her attention. It's a very elementary school way of showing your emotions and trying to get someone's attention. It's equal parts pathetic and adorable. He just loves how clueless and frustrated Cass gets that he doesn't understand what Dean says. I also think it's important to note that Dean will tease Cass when things are good, but like, if Cass is down in the dumps or they're having a bad time, then Dean doesn't do that. My counter argument to your 11th point. I will admit this is actually a good point. I will say though that, I mean, Dean does tease Sam as well, but I think there's a difference in reactions for sure. Like, Dean really likes Cass's reactions to his teasing. Whether or not that's indicative of him being in love with Cass is up for debate. I mean, we're literally debating it. I mean, a lot of strong friendships have playful teasing, and it can actually be a sign of a healthy relationship because you trust the person is joking because you know your relationship is solid. Oh, fuck. I gave you an unintentional good explanation for the teasing. My point is, any type of relationship has teasing, platonic, familial, and romantic. So you cannot 100% definitively say it's romantic, okay? Okay, cool. Cool. Piece of evidence number 12. the rarity of the relationship. The thing about Dean is that he has very much been isolated most of his life from strong relationships outside of his father, his brother, and Bobby. Dean has shown throughout the series as having a really hard time keeping up strong long-term connections with people. He does get better as seasons go on, like, don't get me wrong. However, he's a serial hookup artist. The two actual relationships he had, Cassie and Lisa, lasted less than a year. When we first meet Dean, I don't think he had a friend that wasn't like Bobby, who I count as a familiar relationship for obvious reasons. So, like, outside of family, he wasn't doing too great in the friendship sphere. The few people that Dean was apparently friends with were very surface level relationships with other hunters that feels more like co-worker vibes than actual friendships. I'm not saying he didn't like them or not care about them. It's just a lot of these relationships throughout the series are transactional and hunting based. It's like they need Sam and Dean's help, or like vice versa. They don't usually just meet up to like have dinner, you know what I mean? On top of that, a lot of these so-called friends will just like disappear from Sam and Dean's life and then never get mentioned again. I'm not trying to in any way discount the fact that they formed some good relationships with this arrangement, like Jody, for example. What I am saying is that these friendships were all premised around kind of the same thing and had the same kind of format. The relationship that Dean had with Cass was always different. He wanted Cass around not just for case reasons, but just to have him around. Dean would be actively worried that he wouldn't hear from Cass for a certain amount of time. Like, he rarely heard from most of the people who were his friends, and he didn't get mad at them or like get angsty at all about it. He never got on his knees and told Garth that he needed him. Like, Cass is more than just a friend, you know? Like, Cass lives with them for seasons. They have so many bedrooms in that bunker, and only 2 people ever got a room, Cass and Jack. I guess Mary technically got a room for a minute there, but like, she was there so short of amount of time. And obviously Jack is different for like obvious reasons. But Cass is a constant and long-term relationship that Dean has never had before and probably will never have again, mostly because he dies on rebar 6 months later. So like, yeah. Love that. The fact that Dean wanted to hold Cass so close to him at like all times, and the fact that he let Cass get that close to him and see Dean at his most vulnerable is unique for Dean and his relationships. I also want to point out that I think Dean started to believe more in having strong relationships outside of the family because of Cass. Before season 4, he had his family, Sam and Bobby, and that's pretty much it. Like, let's be real. Cass comes along, and after season 4, he starts to develop stronger relationships with people. I know that Bobby wasn't blood, and he did definitely represent that non-family loyalty. I just think because he was basically a surrogate father, it's a bit different to like the friendships that I'm trying to talk about here, if that makes sense. There's also something else that's very special about Cass. He is an angel. Dean is a hunter. He kills supernatural beings. It is his job. Have you ever heard of the show Supernatural, where they hunt supernatural beings? It's kind of the premise of the show. This man's a hunter. This man's a beautiful little angel. But yeah, Dean has a lot of prejudice against supernatural beings, and he really hates angels. As I've noted before, it's very canon. He doesn't like angels.
Wait, angel killing bullets? Awesome.
Cass is the first relationship he ever pursued with a supernatural being. I think that's really important to point out. I mean, like, a positive relationship. Like, he wanted Cass to be his friend. Like, what was so special about Cass that Dean was able to put aside his prejudice and genuinely end up liking him enough to inspire Cass to rebel against heaven for him? After that relationship with Cass works out, Dean is more open to having supernatural friendships. Most notably, my boy Benny, who, if they sold Carver Kuznetsov, I would probably have one. Too bad the only one left is Sam. And I don't want a Sam one. Benny is a bit different. And, you know, for that fact, so is Crowley. However, Crowley is a completely different type of relationship that we won't get into. Benny, on the other hand, is the closest comparison we can make between how Dean treats Cass versus another friend very similar to Cass. Because Benny is a vampire. The answer is, though Dean loves Benny a lot, he treats them differently for sure. Dean, immediately abandons Benny after Sam has a problem with him. Meanwhile, Cass is acting super weird and Dean is like, I need to pray to him. Where is he? I have to cry on my knees and tell him I need him. I'm going to be ridiculously mad at him because he left me. So yeah, obviously Dean's feelings for Cass are unique in a comparison to his feelings towards his normal friendships. We don't see enough of Dean in a relationship for me to make an accurate comparison there, unfortunately. But if his feelings for Cass are not like those of his friendships, then it stands to reason that they are of someone who is in love with him. Case in point, I made an amazing argument there. Good job, good job, good job. So my counter argument to your 11 or your 12th point, girl, very long-winded here. It's not that I disagree with you here. I do think that Dean's relationship with Cass is unique. I just think maybe though his feelings towards him may not be like those of his normal relationships, they most likely lean towards those feelings he has for Sam, his brother. He has very similar wants to keep them close, and he's overprotective for both of them, over emotional reactions towards both of them. And hello, once again, Wincest shippers. I do not mean this in a romantic way. You can leave now. I don't know why you're still here. I've told you many times. No. I mean this in a familial, brotherly relationship kind of way. I mean, throughout the series, Dean has referred to Cass as his brother and his family. This is canon fact that you cannot deny, and you've brought up before, so you know it's true. We, the Supernatural writers, have purposely had him say brother 2 times so that we can have plausible deniability, so I will fight this point. Piece of evidence number 13. He wants to share his interests with Cass. Throughout the series, we get little tidbits of information that Dean tries to share a lot of his interests with Cass. We get a scene where Dean clearly made a Cass mixtape so that Cass could listen to the music he likes. There's canon evidence that Dean makes Cass watch movies he likes. Dean has even tried to get Cass to go hunting, get Cass into hunting with varying rates of success. Dean took Cass to a strip club the first time that Dean hangs out with Cass alone, not only to get him laid, but to share something that he likes with Cass. I mean, Cass practically learns how to be human from Dean. He knows everything that Dean likes and has shown this so many times throughout the series. I mean, he literally went fishing when he and Dean were on a break because Dean most likely mentioned something about how much he liked fishing. Another example is when Cass literally hid the angel tablet in Dean's favorite chain restaurant locations. I think how much Cass knows about Dean is not only an indication of how much Cass pays attention and learn how to be human from Dean, but also how much Dean is willing and wants to share his interests with Cass. I think you want to share your interests with the people you love. This isn't exactly evidence that he's in love with Dean, but I think this, coupled with the other points in this entire argument, add to the strength of my argument with Dean being in love with Cass. Counter argument number 13. I mean, you kind of already mentioned my counter argument. You share your interests with your friends and family because you want to share with the people you love. I mean, I can attest to the fact that the people I love in my life have heard me talk way too much about Supernatural. You know, you just want to share what you love with the people you love. So that doesn't mean necessarily romantically. Piece of evidence number 14. Dean stopped having sex with women after season 12. Here's the thing about Dean. He's someone who has been shown to have a lot of casual sex throughout the run of the show. More so in the beginning of the show, but in later seasons, he's still shown to hook up every once in a while. He's also a big flirt, and he hits on a lot of women throughout the series run. However, something happens after season 12, and Dean basically has no more on-screen hookups. And so we can assume no more hookups. There are some rare instances where he hits on a woman. He was all up in Daphne's grill during the Scooby Natural episode. Now, you may be wondering why this even matters. I mean, Dean had a lot going on from season 13 to 15. Let me tell you why it matters. It matters for one very significant reason. Cass dies at the end of season 12. This devastates Dean, as previously stated, and ever since then, Dean hasn't had sex with Lynn. Even after Cass came back and they got their mom back, still nothing. We literally seen Dean go to bars and not get laid. Even when he and Cass were broken up for a brief period of time, he did not have sex with anyone. Now, I'm not saying there weren't other reasons, like the death of his mother, that may have affected that sex life. However, that was 3 seasons, and there were moments when things were okay, and Dean wasn't hooking up. So alone, this point doesn't prove that Dean is in love with Cass. But this, coupled with everything just stated above, is just like a little cherry on top. Well, your final point and my final counter argument to you before I begin my roast of you, where I will tear you apart and show you that me, the Supernatural writers, have made 100% clear that Dean is not in love with Cass, and we were only querying you. So, interesting final point. I will say this. It could have just been due to character development. He's just no longer into casual hookups. It is suspicious, though, that he never pursues a different type of relationship with a woman then. I will say this, though. I think at this point in the timeline, Dean is dealing with a lot. I think one of the biggest things he's struggling with is how the people close to him keep dying. He loses a lot of people throughout those 3 seasons, and it breaks him. I just don't think Dean wanted to let anyone in, and was probably pretty depressed. I will give you this, though. There were some moments, like end of season 13, where things were fine and he would be less depressed and more likely to hook up. The timing, though suspicious, is not definite in any way. And as every single professor at university has told me, correlation does not equal causation. Thank you, every single SFU professor ever who has told me that since my 100 level courses, 5 years, and I have now used it in an argument that actually matters. Guys, correlation does not equal causation. Now you've learned something if you really did think correlation equals causation, and I have now saved probably 1 or 2 professors' lives just by letting people know this. So not only did I prove a point, but I also saved a professor's life today. And to think that this video could have so much impact is just insane. Anyways, I'm about to tear you apart in my rebuttal, so stay tuned for that. Anyways, let's hear what you have a conclusion of. And that comes to the end of my 14 points that I have put together. So in conclusion, though some of those pieces of evidence alone are not indicative of Dean being in love with Cass, I think we need to acknowledge that I was able to come up with 14 pieces of solid evidence that, when all taken together into consideration, it is pretty damning towards Dean being in love with Cass. Though some good counter arguments were raised by my opponent, I think constantly bringing up how Dean does the same thing with Sam is kind of irrelevant. I mean, of course, there's going to be overlap in his behavior with 2 people he cares about. It doesn't mean that Dean isn't in love with Cass. Dean has clearly shown throughout the series to highly value his relationship with Cass, and Cass is very important to him. He has shown that he loves him in so many ways, from his overreaction to him being in danger or the way he playfully teases him. Though he never says that he loves Cass, it doesn't mean that his actions have always been louder than words. Why Dean never expressed those emotions to Cass is probably a combination of many things. Fear of losing Cass, fear of being in a relationship, fear of rejection, his own self-hatred and insecurities, him thinking he's not good enough for Cass, and most likely his own fear of his emotions towards Cass. As someone who used to have a lot of problems and still do struggle to this day with romantic insecurities and fears, I get it, Dean. This may seem counterintuitive because Dean is quite suave and is a ladies' man. That doesn't mean he's comfortable with the seriousness of being in love and the feelings that accompany that. Hookups and a serious relationship with someone you love while having a job where death is common are not the same things. That's just a bit of my 2 cents. I could do an entirely different video as to why Dean never expressed his love for Cass. This debate is simply whether or not Dean is in love with Cass, and according to the canon evidence presented above, I am of the opinion that Dean is in love with Cass. Thank you. You may proceed, my opponent, the Supernatural writers.